Namaskar, a warm welcome to World News, an Indian perspective on All India Radio. This is Nabnita Adhikari and with me is Renuka, bringing glimpses of the major developments of the day from across the globe. Over the next half an hour, we shall bring you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment and more. The headlines. Prime Minister Narendra Modi invites Japanese business leaders to invest in India to enhance participation in country's development journey. Mr. Modi addresses Indian community in Tokyo, says India and Japan are natural partners. Prime Minister Modi to participate in Quad Leaders Summit in Tokyo on Tuesday, also to hold bilateral meetings with US President along with Prime Ministers of Australia and Japan. India and United States of America sign investment incentive agreement in Tokyo. US President Joe Biden says he would be willing to use force to defend Taiwan if it is attacked. Sri Lanka thanks India for its support and assistance to help mitigate severe economic crisis. Anthony Albanese sworn in as Prime Minister of Australia. World Health Organization honours India's 1 million ASHA workers for their outstanding contribution to advancing global health. India and Pakistan play out a thrilling 1-1 draw in their first match of 11th Asia Cup Hockey Championship in Jakarta. Former world number 1 Naomi Osaka and defending champion Barbara Krejcikova knocked out in first round at French Open tennis. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has invited Japanese business leaders to invest in India to enhance participation in India's journey to becoming a hub for textiles, technologies and manufacturing sectors. On day one of his two-day Japan visit, Mr. Modi on Monday met the chief executive officers of prominent Japanese firms who have earned global recognition. The Prime Minister met the CEO of Japanese clothing brand Fast Retailing, the parent company of Uniqlo, Mr. Tadashi Yanagi, to discuss investment opportunities for the retailer in textile manufacturing in India. Both of them discussed Uniqlo's growing presence in India and investment opportunities for textile manufacturing in India under production-linked incentive scheme. While Mr. Yanagi appreciated the entrepreneurial zeal of the people of India, Prime Minister Modi asked him to take part in the PM Mitra scheme aimed at further strengthening the textile sector. Both Mr. Modi and Mr. Yanagi spoke about how to invest in the production and retail industry in India. Mr. Yanagi said India's IT talent is excellent. Prime Minister Modi and Yanagi discussed various reforms being undertaken to enable ease of doing business for foreign investors in India, including in the areas of industrial development, infrastructure, taxation and labour. The Prime Minister also met the chairperson of NEC Corporation, Dr. Nobuhiro Indo, in Tokyo. During the interaction, he hailed NEC's role in India's telecommunications sector and discussed opportunities in new and emerging technologies in India. Mr. Endo spoke about opportunities in India in areas such as smart cities, emerging technologies, and an innovative effort to encourage learning of Japanese in India. Mr. Modi highlighted India's reform trajectory and talked about opportunities in areas such as digital learning, fintech, infra and logistics networks. During his meeting with Mr. Endo, Mr. Modi discussed various reforms being undertaken to enable ease of doing business in India, including in industrial development, taxation and labour. They also discussed opportunities in India in new and emerging technologies. The Prime Minister also met founder of SoftBank, Mr. Masayoshi Son. After meeting Mr. Modi, Mr. Son said, India is growing very quickly. He said new startups are coming up every day and unicorns are coming very quickly. Mr. Son said India's future is bright and Prime Minister Modi is committed for the success of India, supporting startups and making it center of high technology. Mr. Modi received a warm welcome from the Indian community as he reached Tokyo Monday morning for the second in-person Quad Summit. Apart from participating in the Quad Summit on Tuesday, Mr. Modi will hold bilateral meetings with US President Joe Biden, Prime Minister of Australia Anthony Albanese and Prime Minister of Japan Fumio Kishida. After reaching Tokyo, Mr. Modi said Japan's Indian community has made pioneering contribution in different fields. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, in an op-ed published in a leading Japanese newspaper, wrote India and Japan will contribute towards building an open, free and inclusive Indo-Pacific region connected by secure seas, integrated by trade and investment, defined by respect of sovereignty and territorial integrity, and anchored in international law. In op-ed titled India-Japan, a partnership for peace, stability and prosperity, Mr. Modi wrote, defence ties between the two countries are growing rapidly, from exercises and information exchanges to defence manufacturing. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, US President Joe Biden, Japanese PM Fumio Kishida and US Secretary of State Antony Blinken attended the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework event in Tokyo. Speaking at the event, Mr. Modi said India will work for an inclusive and flexible Indo-Pacific economic framework. Mr. Modi highlighted trust, transparency and timeliness are key.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi has said India's relationship with Japan is one of strength, respect and common resolve for the world. In his interaction with the Indian community in Tokyo this evening, Mr. Modi said it is going to be 70 years of India-Japan diplomatic relations and the two nations are natural partners. He stated that Japan has played an important role in India's growth and development.
हमारे डिप्लोमेटिक संबंधों को 70 साल होने जा रहे हैं। आप भी यहाँ रहते हुए अनुभव करते होंगे, हिंदुस्तान में भी हर कोई अनुभव करता है कि भारत और जापान नेचुरल पार्टनर है। भारत की विकास यात्रा में जापान की महत्वपूर्ण भूमिका रही है और इसलिए एक प्रकार से इस रिश्ता हमारा सामर्थ्य का है, ये रिश्ता सम्मान का है और ये रिश्ता विश्व के लिए साझे संकल्प का भी है।
For details, here is a desk report.
Prime Minister Modi said India's relationship with Japan is that of Buddha, of knowledge and of meditation. He said it is great to see that Indians living in Japan have seamlessly blended Indian culture and traditions with that of Japan. He termed the commitment towards the motherland as inspiring. He said Indians have always shown immense commitment towards Karma Bhumi and at the same time they have never left roots of Dharma Bhumi. Mr. Modi said people have to walk the path of Gautam Buddha on Monday as this is the only way to fight the evils of climate change, violence and terrorism. He said India has always been able to overcome tremendous challenges.
आज की दुनिया को भगवान बुद्ध के विचारों पर, उनके बताए रास्ते पर चलने की शायद पहले से ज्यादा जरूरत है। यही रास्ता है जो आज दुनिया की हर चुनौती, चाहे वो हिंसा हो, अराजकता हो, आतंकवाद हो, क्लाइमेट चेंज हो, इन सब से मानवता को बचाने का यही मार्ग है। भारत सौभाग्यशाली है कि उसे भगवान बुद्ध का प्रत्यक्ष आशीर्वाद मिला। उनके विचारों को आत्मसात करते हुए भारत निरंतर मानवता की सेवा कर रहा है।
During COVID, when the whole world faced problems, Mr. Modi said, India came forward with its Made in India vaccines. He said his government is working towards strengthening the healthcare infrastructure in India. He added that wellness centers are being developed to take healthcare to all corners of the nation. The Prime Minister mentioned India's ASHA workers have been bestowed with WHO's Global Health Leaders Award. India is moving forward to fight the global challenge of climate change and is committed to net zero carbon emissions by 2070, emphasized Mr. Modi. He added India is leading the climate change negotiations. The Prime Minister said India is serious about working on green future.
भारत आज किस तरह वैश्विक चुनौतियों का मुकाबला करने में मदद कर रहा है, इसका एक और उदाहरण एनवायरमेंट का भी है। आज क्लाइमेट चेंज विश्व के सामने मौजूद एक महत्वपूर्ण संकट बन गया है। हमने भारत में इस चुनौती को देखा भी और उस चुनौती से स्थायी समाधान के लिए रास्ते भी खोजने की दिशा में हम आगे बढ़े। भारत ने 2070 तक नेट जीरो के लिए कमिट किया है। हमने इंटरनेशनल सोलर अलायंस जैसे ग्लोबल इनिशिएटिव का भी नेतृत्व किया।
The Prime Minister further said nation has set the target of fulfilling 50% of its energy needs through non-fossil capacity by 2030. In the last 8 years, country has made democracy strong and resilient and it is serving as one of the strongest pillars of progress, said Mr. Modi. Abhishek Mukhopadhyay for World News, All India Radio.
In today's Hotspot section, we bring you a discussion on Quad Summit and its significance. In conversation are Arprasad Sekhar Dolla, Professor, Center for East Asian Studies, School of International Studies, and Sanjay Jha, Journalist.
Japan was a pioneer in creating the concept of both the Quad and the Indo-Pacific area. Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's speech to Parliament in 2007 entitled Confluence of Two Seas, which introduced this idea, although he did not use the word Quad specifically, but that's when the Quad came. With India's partaking, the Quad has been upgraded to a cooperation platform on global issues and has held regular ministerial meetings. Professor, what do you think the role of Quad in modern days?
The key role of Quad, which is essentially quadrilateral security dialogue, it aims to provide some kind of security stability within the global order and also very specifically within Asia. So it has essentially two key components to basically promote. It has essentially a twofold vision. One, a free and open international order, and the other one, free and open Indo-Pacific. So with these twofold vision, it is essentially committed to making substantial contribution to the world and also the region. In fact, if you look at the recent statement that actually encapsulates the essence of this forum, which is a practical cooperation in the four members, the US, Japan, India, and Australia. And I feel what unites and binds these four countries is the robust and vibrant democratic system that exists in these countries. And the present meeting, of course, is taking place, within this larger global context, which is witnessing a paradigm shift. And therefore, the paradigm shift is essentially about, the world in some ways evolving into two blocks, a kind of a democratic groupings and the non-democratic groupings. And it is this recent paradigm shift that actually provide the much needed impetus for this Quad to become very strong and making a substantial contribution to the global community, particularly within Indo-Pacific.
Joining the Quad has both advantages and disadvantages for India. Through the Quad, India can counterbalance China's growing presence in Indo-Pacific region, including its BRI Belt and Road Initiative, which has led to its building port facilities in countries neighboring India like Sri Lanka, giving rise to a sense of encirclement in New Delhi. With the Quad, India can rise above its middle power status and project its influence beyond the Indo-Pacific. Also, India's active policy and extended naval policy boost India's engagement in the Indo-Pacific. So, India coming on board of Quad, how strategically it has helped us?
I think India joining the Quad is definitely going to make a major difference in terms of the way India would position itself within Asia and also in the global international order. One of the advantages of joining the Quad, it shall provide a sense of security. It will actually strengthen its own national security within the region, particularly in the context of what we've been witnessing in our relations with China. The bilateral component between China and India is one, that actually is a key driving force that would actually contribute a great deal to the national security of our country. And this will also in some ways send strong signals to any country that probably, would pose some kind of a threat to our own national security. In fact, we've seen how China is known to have been advancing its own string of pearls, as the Western scholars, highlight. That has been, in a way, is a key concern for the Indian government. And therefore, in order to ensure that the national security is preserved, joining the Quad would be a great boost. And secondly, of course, India has put in place the Act East policy for quite some time, which is seen as a major initiative that has been formalized between India and a number of Southeast Asian countries, especially ASEAN and also ARF. And I would see that, joining Quad, would definitely help India in order to accomplish its own national interests. And of course, we've seen Chinese investments in Sri Lanka and how that is generally seen as one of the key factors in driving Sri Lanka into an economic crisis. Given this, I think joining the Quad would be a great level playing field in a way. And in terms of the disadvantages, I think I do feel that this probably could pose certain institutional constraints.
Professor Stella, one of the primary focuses of Quad is the Indo-Pacific region. And naturally, when the leaders sit together, they would talk about developments in the Indo-Pacific region, challenges in the Indo-Pacific region, and the areas of concern. India is expected to maintain its autonomy and continues to be cautious about Indo-Pacific economic framework. What kind of challenges do we see in this proposed framework?
I think one of the major challenges that we see within the proposed framework of Quad is, the way in which East Asia has been evolving in the last few years. And key concerns is about the rise of China. So given the, rise of China, the Indo-Pacific region felt in some ways the need to evolve a forum that would actually address some of the emanating challenges. In fact, U.S. is very much present and active in Asia, given its own relations with Japan, South Korea, and many other countries. And similarly, Australia's relations within the region and our own active policy, all of these make the region quite imbued with several issues and challenges. And it is generally believed that Quad would actually provide some element of stability and element of security for the region. And even as the Quad highlights, the imperative for free and open international order and also free and open Indo-Pacific. And this forum would strive to accomplish this.
India has to obviously play a very important role with the challenges which is emanating. When Prime Minister Modi will meet with the leaders of four-nation Indo-Pacific Quadrilateral Alliance, the question of Indian naval power will lie at the core of their discussion. Faced with the rise of China, India is making significant investments in maritime security. India knows the United States won't alone carry the burden of securing the Indian Ocean. So the new aircrafts are being tested for its carrier fleet and new submarines are being inducted. How significant role do you see for India in the Indo-Pacific maritime security?
In fact, maritime security has emerged as an important element in a global order. Particularly India having very strong naval base and also naval force can actually play an important role given the way in which the Quad members are trying to come together and carry out a number of maritime security drills. What you basically find is that, yes, United States cannot carry the burden of ensuring stability within the Indo-Pacific region, and therefore it is necessary for the other countries to share that burden. And if you look at the global architecture, is essentially a shared responsibility. Even within the region, the regional stability has to be ensured by the regional powers. And I think it is here we do find India can be a part of this process of ensuring a maritime security within the region.
India has also gone beyond the Quad and has deepened its bilateral ties with the Quad members. With Australia, India has signed an information sharing agreement and a mutual logistics support agreement. Both countries have also participated in bilateral military exercises such as AUSSIE-INDEX, what we call Australia-India exercise, and AUSTRA-HIND, and have conducted dialogues on defense policy and maritime security. We have also recently seen India and Australia entering into a free trade agreement. So we see the ties deepening between two countries. Do you think the Quad is also enabling the country to have more deeper bilateral relations?
I think any forum that is forged will have both multilateral as well as bilateral components. So in this context, the Quad, which is essentially a multilateral forum, would definitely lead to strengthening of the bilateral components as well. And if you look at India-Japan relations, recently we've celebrated about 70 years of cooperation. In fact, Japan is one of the largest investors in India, contributing to our development. In fact, Japan invested about $30 billion in the last 10 years, and it also promised another $42 billion investment in the next 5 years. And this would definitely contribute a great deal to the strengthening and the deepening of cooperation within the bilateral context. Similarly, India-Australia, what we find is how Australia and India have signed the free trade agreement and also set up a number of institutions in especially Australia to strengthen our own bilateral relations. And we've also seen how Australia also promised to invest about 1,500 crores in the next few years. I think this would actually go a long way in deepening and also strengthening the bilateral components. And I think what I do see is that the bilateral cooperation would actually permeate a number of areas, especially, vis-a-vis Japan, given Japanese technological development in a number of areas, whether it is automobiles or chip technology or robotics and artificial intelligence. What we find is there is immense scope for deepening the bilateral relations. And I do believe that this Quad would actually facilitate the strengthening of bilateral relations among the four countries, India and US, India and Japan, India and Australia.
Thank you very much, Professor, for your time.
Thank you for having me.
India and United States of America signed an investment incentive agreement in Tokyo, Japan on Monday. The agreement was signed by India's Foreign Secretary Vinay Kwatra and Chief Executive Officer of U.S. International Development Finance Corporation, Scott Nathan. It is expected that signing of this agreement would lead to enhanced investment support provided by Development Finance Corporation in India, which will further help in country's development. This is All India Radio giving you the news. For quick news updates round the clock, follow us on Twitter at AIR News Alerts.
U.S. President Joe Biden has said that he would be willing to use force to defend Taiwan if it is attacked. He was answering questions in Tokyo during a press conference with Japanese PM Fumio Kishida when a journalist asked them about the defense of Taiwan. Referring to increasing reports of Chinese warplane incursions into Taiwan's self-declared air defense zone, Mr. Biden said they are already flirting with danger right now by flying so close. Sri Lanka's ambassador to China, Dr. Palita T.P. Kohona, has thanked the government of India for its support and assistance to Sri Lanka during this difficult period for the island nation. He visited Indian Embassy in Beijing to participate in the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav celebrations as India is celebrating 75 years of its independence. Dr. Kohona said many of Sri Lanka's leaders turned to India for inspiration. Last week, Sri Lanka received a consignment of a $16 million humanitarian aid package from India to help mitigate severe shortages caused by country's worst economic crisis in recent memory.
Anthony Albanese was sworn in as Prime Minister of Australia this morning. The 59-year-old new Prime Minister was sworn in at a brief ceremony in Government House, Canberra. Labour Senator Penny Wong was sworn in as Foreign Minister, Richard Marles as Deputy Prime Minister, Jim Chalmers as Treasurer and Katie Gallagher as Finance Minister. India's 1 million all-women ASHA workers were awarded and honoured by the World Health Organization for their outstanding contribution to advancing global health, demonstrating leadership and commitment to regional health issues. They were honoured for their crucial role in linking the community with the health system and ensuring those living in rural poverty can access primary healthcare services throughout the COVID-19 pandemic.
India's Health Minister Mansukh Mandavia has stressed on the need to build a resilient global supply chain to enable equitable access to vaccines and medicines. Addressing the 75th session of World Health Assembly in Geneva, the minister called for streamlining WHO's approval process for vaccines and therapeutics and strengthen WHO to build a more resilient global health security architecture. Mr. Mandavia reiterated India's commitment to build a more resilient global health security architecture. At the session, India also raised dismay and concern over WHO's recent exercise on all-cause excess mortality, where country-specific authentic data published by the statutory authority has not been taken into account. India men's hockey team started their campaign by playing out a 1-1 draw against old rivals Pakistan in the 11th edition of Asia Cup Hockey Championship at GPK Arena in Jakarta on Monday. Former world number 1 Naomi Osaka and defending champion Barbora Krejcikova were ousted from the French Open tennis on Monday after first-round losses. Osaka, a 4-time Grand Slam champion, was knocked out by 27-seeded American by Amanda Anisimova. Krejcikova was eliminated by 97-seeded French teenager Diane Parry.
In IPL cricket, Gujarat Titans will take on Rajasthan Royals in the first qualifier match on Tuesday evening at Eden Gardens, Kolkata at 7:30 p.m. Now let us take a look at the major developments around the world as reported in the foreign press. First, we have a look at the press reports on China. PTI reports that Pakistan's newly appointed Foreign Minister Bilawal Bhutto Zardari held talks with his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi on Sunday in the Chinese city of Guangzhou to firm up the all-weather ties between the two countries. Reuters reports that Shanghai has reopened some public transport after a months-long COVID lockdown. SCMP reports China's appetite for Russian energy is being hit by diminishing consumption, soaring prices.
Now let's have a look at the press reports on Nepal. The Khabar Hub writes that the CPN-UML has won mayoral and deputy mayoral seats in Dakshinawari municipality. The Kathmandu Post writes that the Nepal Oil Corporation decided to hike the prices of petrol, diesel and kerosene by 10 rupees per litre each. The Rising Nepal writes that the recent political and economic crisis in Sri Lanka has prompted people to compare Nepal's economic environment to that of Sri Lanka.
Now let's have a look at the press reports on Balochistan. Dawn reports that Balochistan has received 17% less rainfall over the past 4 months, causing a drought-like situation which badly hit Changai, Karan, Nushki and Wanshuk districts of the province. The International Day of Yoga will be held on 21st of June and the main event will be held at Mysuru, where Prime Minister Narendra Modi will lead the mass yoga demonstration. Briefing media in New Delhi on Monday, India's Minister for Ayush Sarbanand Sonowal said as this International Day of Yoga is falling in the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav year, Yoga Day will be celebrated in 75 iconic places in the country. A quick look at the headlines once again. Prime Minister Narendra Modi invites Japanese business leaders to invest in India to enhance participation in country's development journey. Mr. Modi addresses Indian community in Tokyo, says India and Japan are natural partners. Prime Minister Modi to participate in Quad Leaders Summit in Tokyo on Tuesday, also to hold bilateral meetings with US President along with Prime Ministers of Australia and Japan. India and United States of America sign investment incentive agreement in Tokyo. US President Joe Biden says he would be willing to use force to defend Taiwan if it is attacked. World Health Organization honors India's 1 million ASHA workers for their outstanding contribution to advancing global health. India and Pakistan play out a thrilling 1-1 draw in their first match of 11th Asia Cup Hockey Championship in Jakarta. Former world number 1 Naomi Osaka and defending champion Barbora Krejcikova knocked out in first round at French Open tennis. And now, before we end, let us listen to Mahatma Gandhi's favorite bhajan Vaishnav Jan by artists from Croatia. And with that, we end this bulletin. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow with the next edition of World News.